Hi, kids. It's Monday. It's March 17th. Today is St. Paddy's Day. Welcome to Take an Early Lunch with me, your host, Craig Delisio. And it's St. Paddy's Day, Monday the 17th. Today's St. Paddy's Day, which means tomorrow is going to be National Hangover Day for those of you that are Irish and that imbibe. Why am I not live over here on Facebook? Well, I don't know. Maybe Facebook doesn't realize it's 11:30. I don't know, but it'll come on when it's ready. Hey, listen, we're here. We're ready to go. Pardon me. I'm still, I had the flu almost 4 weeks ago, and I'm still like got the phlegmy thing going on. I know that's gross. I'm sorry. I apologize. Hey, I'm sitting down today, not standing up. Big deal. All right, so it's St. Paddy's Day. St. Padraig, and I got corrected by one of my friends online. It's not St. Patty. It's St. Paddy with D's because the Irish name is actually Padraig, Padraig. There's a golfer named Padraig, something or other, Irish golfer. That's the male version of the name, and so it wouldn't be Patty with T's. That would be Patricia or Patrick, but that's not. Patrick is the English version. Padraig is the Irish version. So it is actually St. Paddy's Day with D's. Irishmen will correct you for that. I'm not Irish, not in the least. So it is St. Patrick's Day, and I did some research to the old chat GPT to see what the five favorite beers on St. Paddy's Day and also the five favorite foods on St. Paddy's Day. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. St. Patrick was a missionary to the Irish island, the Emerald Isle. There's debate over whether he was actually Irish or whether he was Italian, sent over from Rome, or whether he was Irish, went to Italy and trained as a priest and came back. The legend has it he drove out all the snakes. That's actually not true. That was symbolism. He drove out the Druids, the Celtic, stop short of saying Satan worshippers, but they were sort of weird, what's the term? Wiccan-ish, Druidians. She doesn't look Druish. What's that movie? What's that quote from? That's a movie quote, right? She doesn't look Druish. So the snakes being driven out were basically St. Paddy driving out the Druids and the heathen and the Wiccan and the, what's the other term? Whatever. The, non-God worshipping entities out of Ireland, because there are snakes in Ireland. I don't know what kind, but there are snakes. And he didn't physically drive out the animals, the snake animal, reptile, but he did, started the church, missioned, evangelized, missionized. He evangelized Ireland and drove out the snakes, which is symbolic language. So St. Paddy was potentially an Italian. I'll take credit for that. Gotta get work Italy in there any way you can, right? I don't think that's the case. I doubt it. I think it's more likely that he was an Irishman who went to Italy to train as a priest, because there was no church in Ireland then. Came back and evangelized, proselytized, and converted Ireland to predominantly Catholic, at least part, and the other half is Protestant. Did you know that only the Irish side wear green? It's always the wearing of the green. Green's always the Irish thing. The Protestant side wear orange. That's their official thing. So it's the Orangemen, or the Protestant. That's about as much knowledge as I ever got from my stepfather, who was Irish. So, yeah, that's all I'll say. As Forrest Gump once said, that's all I have to say about that. I have a cousin. I guess technically he's my second cousin. He's my cousin's son, whose name is Nick. His dad's name is Nick, He has an uncle named Nick. Yeah, we're that Italian family. It's like my big fat Greek wedding. This is Nicky, and Nick. Um, but when Nick was born, he was born on St. Patty's Day. So my uncle Franny, who's his grandfather, always calls him Pasquale, which is the Italian version of Patrick. So when we talk, if you ask an Italian to say St. Patrick's Day in Italian, it would be Santo Pasquale. So he calls Nick Pasquale. He has since he's been born. So I call him Nick Pasquale sometimes when I see him. So there you go. There's a little, some true history and some not, about St. Patty's Day. Let me see if we're actually on the air. No, I don't know what's going on over here, but I'm gonna have to fix YouTube later. That's all right. We can upload this. So St. Patty's Day. So let's talk about. I didn't make this list, but you guys can bleep bloop this in the comment section. Give me your top 5 movies with Irish in the title or some form of Irish. Okay. I can think of The Irishman with De Niro and Joe Pesci. That was a loosely truthful documentary-ish. Not documentary, but it was a kind of biographical of Frank Sheeran, who was a guy from Wilmington, Delaware, who became a hitman for the Philadelphia mob. Angelo Bruno and Russell Buffalino was like they were best friends. But he was Irish, so he wasn't in the mob. So that movie was called The Irishman. There was a movie called Kill the Irishman that I had never heard of, and I just saw it on Tubi. And it was pretty good. It's about a guy, I think he was in Cleveland. And he sort of took on the unions and what have you, and the mob, and wreaked a lot of havoc. They end up killing him, but he did a lot of damage beforehand. Thus the title, Kill the Irishman. What was another one? I can't think of too many more with the title of Irish or Ireland in them. I remember the book Trinity by Leon Uris came out in the 70s, maybe late 60s, early 70s. I think that was about the Irish battles against England. Paul McCartney had a song. Yeah, if you're my age, you might remember this. Give Ireland Back to the Irish, where McCartney actually took a stance as an Irishman who grew up in London, took a stance about England getting their mitts off of governmental control of Ireland and letting them be independent, which eventually happened. But not after a lot of bloodshed. Not before a lot of bloodshed had to happen. That's what I meant to say. So, how was you guys' weekend? I hope it was great. Mine was decent. I worked all day Saturday here in the office, trying to implement some stuff. We got a lot of stuff coming on. My daughter is joining me here pretty soon. She's going to switch to part-time at the Montessori school, work for me part-time as she gets her feet wet and gets to start to understand the business, and then she'll go full-time with me. And she's a musician and a singer. She's in a band. This is a far more perfect career for her because it's flexible. Most of you know, wherever I am, I'm working. I can work literally any place that I have my phone and a laptop and internet service. So I'm excited for her for that very reason, because she needs the flexibility to had a floor lamp was right in my face. I'm trying to figure out the right amount of lighting here. So let me show you. Oh, that's wrong. There you go. See, I think it's a bit bright. Let me tone that down. Yeah, that's better. Got a little bit of light. Okay. See, we're professionals here. Hey, so any other songs about Irish? Can't remember. When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, I guess that's the epic, one of Bing Crosby's famous croons. All right, so let's break right into St. Patty's Day. I will admit to two things. I'm not much of a drinker. My friends know that. If I buy, this is the truth. If I buy a 12-pack of beer. And there's only one beer that I go out of my way to drink, and that's Miller Genuine Draft. Anything else, I'm just like, sure, I'll have a beer with you. If it's, I'm out with my buddies or something, and I'll just sort of pick whatever I can tolerate on the menu. But if you're asking me, hey, what beer do you like? It's Miller Genuine Draft. I have since it came out. I've been a Miller drinker since Mr. Winward converted me to that back in my 20s. And I mean, he didn't put a gun in my head. It's my choice. It's to me the better beer. But I'm not a big beer drinker, so I just don't choose to ever really drink. I mean, that sounds bad. I will drink occasionally. I have a beer. If I bought a 12-pack right now, there'd be 4 of them left by December. That's how little I drink. I drink wine sometimes. I will drink whiskey sometimes. That's another thing Mr. Winward converted me to, was Jack Daniels. But if I buy a bottle of Jack, honestly, I buy it mostly because when I smoke meat on the grill, on a smoker, a lot of times, especially if I'm doing brisket, I will do a whiskey-based glaze. Whiskey, brown sugar, honey, and either cherry juice or apple juice. And I boil it, or get it just barely boiled. Oh, butter. And get that all together. And then put it in a glazed bottle. If it's real thick and heavy, then I'll just glaze it with a brush. But usually I keep that thin enough that I can spray it. I have a sprayer. So, I'll have a bottle of Jack in my closet, my pantry for, a year. Because I just am it's never been my thing. So I don't go, wow, man, I can't wait for St. Paddy's Day to go get drunk and go drink. Because nobody ever says, I want to go out and get drunk tonight. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. And the same with Cinco de Mayo. I'm not a go drink on Cinco de Mayo guy either. I just don't. It's just, I'm not judging anybody that does. I'm just telling you it ain't me. So when I talk about this, I'm talking about it from that sort of far removed third party who's like, I'm observing today. No, I'm not participating. I won't be having any green beer or doing anything like of the sort. But here we go. So I'm going to give you. I did the chat GPT. I'm just being funny. And so I asked it 2 questions. What are the top 5 Irish dishes on St. Paddy's Day? And what are the top 5 beers on St. Paddy's Day? I think the top 5 beers thing is everybody's going to pretty much figure that out. And I think probably the top 5 dishes, you're going to figure that out too, because it's pretty much, everybody sees that from time to, if you've been around very long, you kind of know some of this stuff. So let's go with the top 5 beers. Guinness Irish Stout. All right, let me tell you my Guinness story. There was a boat from the English Navy that came in. I was a bouncer at a bar called Ball's Sports Bar. Yeah, it was clever, wasn't it? I didn't think of the name. But it was the in place in Wilmington, Delaware for about 3 years. I was a bouncer there for 2 of those 3 years. And I can't remember the name of this frigate that came in, but for whatever reason, they adopted us as their bar. Like, they were there every night when these guys got done. They were on a goodwill trip. They were literally anchored at Port of Wilmington for probably a month, maybe more. And they would be in our bar every night. And I remember the first night they came in, the owner pulling me and the other bouncers aside and saying, watch out for these guys. They're Englishmen. They're in the Navy. They're in another country. They don't care. There's going to be trouble. Could not be more farther removed from the truth. They were the nicest guys. Made a lot of good friends on that boat. We had more trouble with the local guys being threatened by these guys. Because, listen, girls, I get it. Guy comes into your bar, especially if you grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. Guy comes into the bar, and he's got that, English accent. He's got some tattoos of a bulldog on his forearms, and he's spitting game in the accent and singing English drinking songs. And women swoon, right? We watched it. And the guys didn't like the swooning going on, right? So guys would be a little, nasty about it. But these guys were the nicest guys. They really were. And they would hang out after closing. The bar owner, after a couple of days, he figured out these were good guys. And so he let them hang. And there was one bartender, gosh, I can't remember her name. I want to say Eileen. She fell for a guy. She had a story. I think had lost a husband young, and she fell for this guy, and he had to go back, and it was sad. She couldn't leave. She had kids, and it was hard because they really, they clicked. I think it was real, and I'm hoping. Yeah, I fell out of touch. I was bouncing in my early 20s, and it's not like I'm gonna stay in touch with people from 40 years ago. But I hope that worked out. But anyway, these guys were there. They were so cool. And one night, they needed a ride home. They couldn't catch a cab. I said, "Look, I'll give you a ride." It's on my way home. So I I was driving a Dodge Aries K, which is a small little car. It was me, and I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I had 5 of them stuffed in this little car. It's on the springs. I take them back to the boat, and I'm letting them go. And they're like, "Nah, mate, come on board." I was like, "I really can't." "Nah, come on, have one." So I go on, and they had Guinness from England, which is entirely different from what you can buy here because our alcohol rules are different, right? Beer can only have no more than 6% alcohol. Other than that, it becomes an ale. An ale can have a little more and whatever. But in England, they don't have any rules. This stuff was like, you could light this, and it was warm. They don't really chill it. And man, I had a little, and they're like, "Have a pint." I'm like, "How about I have a half a pint? How about I have that little milk carton from junior high school cafeteria? That's a half pint. I'm just gonna have a little." I was soft, man, but I did. They were so nice, but man, is that stuff? You know the old saying, you put hair in your chest, and then burn it off. That stuff was, you could peel paint. It was the real deal. So Guinness Stout is the number one drink on that was professional, on St. Paddy's Day. I know you do it with a Guinness. Without Guinness, Yingling makes a black lager, and then you put something on top. It's a black and tan. I think you put a regular lager beer on top of the black, and it's black and tan. Whatever. Number 2, Smithwick's Irish Red Ale, a smooth and hearty malt Irish red ale that produces a nice alternative to darker stouts. Harp Lager. I've seen Harp out there. I've seen Smithwick's too, actually, but I've never tried it. Crisp, light Irish lager that pairs well with traditional Irish food. Number 4 is Murphy's Irish Stout, similar to Guinness, but slightly sweeter and less bitter, making it a popular choice for stout lovers. Stout is bitter by nature, and I think it's got something to do with it being hoppy, or it's got extra barley or something in it. It's got more of something than lagers do. And then green beer. There's like non-specific green beer, like, Budweiser will put out green Bud on St. Paddy's Day, and I guess you go to Chicago and like every beer is green. So there you go. What's the one in the green bottle? No, not Heineken. That's Dutch. Rolling Rock. I guess you could get by with a Rolling Rock, right? Because it's made in America, but it does come in a green bottle. That was my grandfather's drink. My mom's dad was a chronic alcoholic, the worst alcoholic I've ever come across. And God bless him. He was a slave to the bottle since he was a kid. And he passed away years ago. And I'm sad about it because it really destroyed his life. But that was his beer, man. He could just go through Rolling Rock like a dog on a bone. Like, I ain't no kidding. It's a true story. I'll tell you this. So my grandfather's name was Albert, but everybody called him Jake because he was a huge John Wayne fan, and he loved the movie Big Jake. And I guess my grandfather in a way resembled John Wayne. So he loved the movie Big Jake, fancied himself in that. It was not much of a grandfather, my grandfather. But I guess I was his favorite because I was the first, and I liked to fish, and that's the only thing we had in common. So. But I remember I used to stay at their house a lot because they raised me, as my mom and my father. They weren't married. So before my mom met my stepfather, first 4.5 years of my life, we lived with my grandparents. And my grandma really raised me. And my grandfather would watch the cowboy pictures in the afternoon. That's what he called them, cowboy pictures. And one afternoon, I remember seeing him sit down and watch a John Wayne movie, which was exactly 90 minutes back then, right? You didn't have these long, epic movies. He drank a case of Rolling Rock ponies. Now, granted, They were only 7 ounces, not 12, but he drank 24 of them in 90 minutes. Got up, ate dinner, walked to the bar, and closed the bar down till 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, that dude could go through beer and alcohol of any kind like nobody's business. So there you have it. So you could, I guess, Rolling Rock, in a green bottle, you could call it that. All right, so what's the top 5 foods for St. Paddy's Day fare? All right, number 1, corned beef and cabbage. Does that not sound like you're cooking a gigantic fart? Like, just like, there's enough gas there to put up a hot air balloon in corned beef and cabbage. I mean, the combination of the two. Whew, and you're drinking beer with it, right? Corned beef and cabbage, which I've never been a fan of. I don't know what it is. The only cabbage I actually like is sauerkraut, so on a hot dog. All right, so corned beef and cabbage is number 1. Irish stew, made with lamb or beef, potatoes, carrots, and onions. So it's basically stew, but, it's stew. Okay. Shepherd's pie. Now, I do like a good shepherd's pie. I had an English roommate, my first apartment, Pat Skilton, my old buddy, lived with me for maybe 3 months. He was getting ready to move to California, and he let his lease expire, and he just wanted a place to crash for a couple months until he moved. And so he did, and he lived with me, and that's the first time I ever had shepherd's pie. He made it homemade. He was from Southwest London, and it's really good. It's like it's like a beef pot pie, but it's made with mashed potatoes instead of a crust, and it's really good. Like, it's really, you bake it and the mashed potatoes get a little crispy on top. Soda bread, which is bread made with baking soda instead of yeast, so it's like flatbread, I guess. Which is, it's kind of, kind of like the taste of it. Like, I wouldn't eat soda bread every day, but it's kind of good. Like, if you're having stew or something with it, to soften it up, because it does get crunchy. Colcannon. That's just said. Number 5. Delicious mashed potato dish with cabbage or kale and plenty of butter, sometimes served with bacon. If you're mixing kale in with my mashed potatoes, you better have some bacon on top of that, because I ain't eating it otherwise. You just ruined. I love mashed potatoes too, and I'm keto, so I can't have them once a year. I do eat mashed cauliflower, and yeah, I know people are gonna be like, but it's honestly, if you make it the way you make mashed potatoes, mashed cauliflower is pretty darn good. So here, let me tell you how Craig makes mashed potatoes / cauliflower. Roast garlic, roasted, not browned or whatever. You got to take them, you cut the tops off of the bulbs, and I've got a roaster, and so you roast them, right? So they're really, really good and soft and roasted, and then you squeeze that into the mashed potatoes. Buttermilk, which was my grandmother's touch, and I still use that. Or you can substitute that, and you can put sour cream right in the mashed potatoes. And parsley. So I do it the same way when I do mashed cauliflower. And cauliflower does have a strong taste, right? Because it's kind of in that cabbagey root sort of food. But you do enough garlic and sour cream, which is keto friendly, and buttermilk, really, because you're not putting that much in there. I'm telling you, it's a pretty darn good substitute. Consistency wise, it's very much like mashed potatoes. So when I make mashed potatoes, that's how I do it. They're very kind of garlicky. They're not overly powerful, but it's just not a plain potato. If you want the recipe, you can inbox me. So there you have it. Hey, who are your so here's I was thinking today, like, what's my favorite scene involving Irish or speaking Irish or Irish people? And it's just an obscure one that came to my mind from Trading Places, the Eddie Murphy movie. The scene on the train, right, when they're going to go from D.C. to Philadelphia, they had to do that swap to get the real crop report and swap it with the fake one with Clarence Beeks, remember? And so Dan Aykroyd comes in, Eddie Murphy comes in first, and he's like, I am Nyanja Ibukor, exchange student from Cameroon. And so he's in there. And then Denholm Elliott, who played Coleman, the butler, he comes in dressed as an Irish priest. And he says, would either one of you like a wee jolt of Irish whiskey to usher in the new year? And that's just my favorite, because he was like so over the top with the Irish accent. So I love that. And of course, Rudy playing for the Irish of Notre Dame. So there you go. That's all the Irish I can think of. What time is it? Well, we're just about done. We're 5 minutes in. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed your lunch. We are now officially, episode 7 is in the books. This is, I do this because Monday's the longest day of the work week. I know it's the same 8 hours as all the other ones, but boy, they drag on compared to all the other 8 hours. Or if you're like me, you never work 8 hours. It's always more than that. This was fun. Glad you joined me. And when this is done, you can keep commenting. So comment your favorite. What's your favorite Irish beer? What's your favorite Irish food? What's your favorite Irish song? What's your favorite movie with Ireland in it, or something about the Irish? Far and Away, right? Wasn't that the Tom Cruise? Keith Urban's wife, Nicole Kidman. Wasn't that about the Irish immigrants that would go west and they got, it was like a sweepstakes, right? And you could get land if you basically got there first and you squatted on it. So I think that's Far and Away. I think that was a movie about that era. All right, there you go. That's the end of our Monday, March 17th, St. Paddy's Day, 2025, year of our Lord. Happy St. Paddy's Day to my Irish friends, and be careful out there. Don't overindulge. See you next week.